Hello and welcome to Save the Eureka Flag with Eastern Marshlands, this special surprise live stream where we are trying to raise money to help the Victorian Trades Hall buy a small piece of the Eureka flag to keep it in comrades' hands. Right now with us we have Possidist Pac-Man,
G'day, guys.
we have Spoogs and shit,
Save that fucking flag.
we have Eugene,
Hello, everyone.
and you have myself as a host. It is time to crack open a cold one with the boys.
Nice.
Let's save that goddamn flag. How are we, lads?
Hell yeah.
Well, I have, as of this moment, at the beginning of this stream, I just pressed the submit button on my donation of 52 Australian dollars to save this fucking flag and stop it from falling into the hands of the bourgeois menace. Apart from that, I am heavily inebriated, so if my analysis of Marxism and the Australian labour movement as a whole is a bit distorted or otherwise fucking weird, I consider this as an apology, or an apology is for when something's actually happened. Consider this a warning. You can't apologize in advance. You warn in advance, or I suppose technically you can. Anyway, moving on.
Yes, if you are going to donate, there is a link in the description. A link in the description. eurekaflag.raisley.com. That's where you can go to donate. And in the comment section for the donation, be sure to put in hashtag email fan or donating from Eastern Marshlands, just so we know that for nothing.
Well, shit, I put Workers of the World Unite, but I mean, I guess that counts too.
Yeah, that counts. So, Spoog and Eugene, how's it going?
Going good.
Oh, same. It's early morning here. Well, it's early morning. I just woke up. This is when it's early morning for me. I just woke up. Haven't even had a cup of coffee, and I'm like, okay, fuck, I'm late. I went to bed at 8 in the evening, so really early. And I was like, I'm going to be so fresh and I'll sleep enough, and then I'll be ready for the stream and for the podcast recording session that we have right after the podcast, right after the stream. And then I was like, oh, it's 10:30, and I'm sleepy as fuck. I have no idea why. 10:30 in the morning. But I'm trying to wake up at the moment. But other than that, I feel rather okay. How about you, Spooks? How's it going?
Well, I'm awake for one. I'm doing pretty good overall.
Mm-hmm.
So
Great.
I'll be doing better once they get that piece of that flag, that sweet, sweet flag.
Yes, I do have to reiterate that this is a small piece of the Eureka flag that is up for sale. Apologies if I've written anywhere save. We're trying to buy the whole flag. Sorry if I've confused anybody about that. So Eugene, as the resident foreigner on this live stream, and hello to the foreigners in the I should say overseas comrades in the chat. So
Foreigners.
yeah, filthy foreigners. So yeah, Eugene, what about the Eureka flag do you know, the history and whatnot?
So, my basic understanding of the whole affair is that, so basically there were gold miners in Australia, and they were like, you know what, I'm really fucking sick of all that bullshit, because we have no fucking, we want better stuff, we want better conditions, and there was something connected to the gold mining license, and they said like, okay, we gotta go on a stockade now, and here is a nice fucking flag, and they introduced the flag, and they were like, okay, fucking police is coming, we better start shooting at them, and we better defend ourselves, because like stockades is a thing that, you know, the imperial governments don't really like. And they're like, okay, boom, 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 and then the firing has started, and then 30 miners have died, and since then, and like 2 years later,
Whoa. Whoa.
Oh, I think Eugene's dying.
Eugene's dead.
Belarus has been
Hello?
nuked.
Yeah,
Oh, you're back. There you go.
yeah, I was
Nope,
going to
I'm
say
back. Oh my god,
Belarus is
fucking hell!
part of the positivist conspiracy to accelerate the dialectic, so
It is.
he doesn't
And
get
so-
an internet connection anymore.
No, so it wasn't the connection, it was my mic, I think. So, and I was like, they started shooting, then blah, 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 30 people died, then the labor movement was established, and the flag became a symbol of the resistance. Yay! And so, that's it. That's all I got.
Well,
you've pretty much summed it up right there. I think specifically the group that was behind this movement, which was inspired by the Red Ribbon Rebellion, who did it first, they were called the Ballarat Reform League.
wait, did you say the Red Ribbon?
Yes, I kid you not. In the town of Bendigo, before the Eureka Stockade, there was a Red Ribbon Rebellion.
Oh,
I'm
fuck.
Googling it right now.
And they were at first considering forming a Red Ribbon Army to storm Government Hill.
Well,
Hun-
what you're trying to tell me is that the Australian federal government at the time had Goku on speed dial.
Yep, pretty much.
Quick! Everything's going wrong. Let's call the Japanese. They have knowledge about suppressing rebellions from a feudal standpoint. Maybe they can help.
The Ballarat Reform League had prepared a petition that was endorsed by, I think, about 20,000 people from Ballarat and Bendigo and surrounding goldfields and whatnot, such as Castlemaine and whatnot. And I believe the basics of it was that it was the license fee to actually be a miner was incredibly high, so they wanted to reduce it to 10 shillings a month. There was monthly or quarterly licenses as well, so you wouldn't have to pay in a massive lump sum for a year-long thing. And then there was things like not sending in the armed forces to enforce the license tax, which was a big thing. That's where the government troops come in. It was during the Eureka Stockade, the government troops were trying to enforce mining licenses, and it was government troops that stormed the stockade. So I think that's where the symbolism of resistance is sort of put onto the Eureka flag as well.
Well, I mean, looking at it, we can sort of draw from that a few things. One, the mining licenses, the corrupt police force at the time went on huge license hunts, try and find people and extort their money. And I'm sort of thinking, well, when they sort of went about paying for mining licenses and so forth, the whole concept of the license was fucking broken from the start. Like they had to pay, like you were obligated to pay the license whether you struck gold or not, and they would like collect on that if you didn't. So really, basically, the police force at the time was locally exploiting the working class who were trying to find the resources and find the gold for their surplus labor, and they would extract that labor whether they yielded results or not. And then they would overcharge for the licenses in the first place.
I would when I visited Sovereign Hill, which is a recreation with actors and whatnot who dress up as the settlers of the time and whatnot. One of the guides there was telling me that the mining license got so tyrannical and authoritarian in that a shopkeeper who was selling mining equipment had a pickaxe just over his shoulder because he was going to put it in his shop and sell it, but he walked by a bunch of government troops, and they're like, "Hey, you're a miner. Pay us the mining tax." He's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And like, and they pretty much up and arrested him on the spot because he didn't have money to pay
Oh,
the
fucking
mining
hell.
tax. Yeah, that's
It's just
that's
stupid.
that's to the extent that it that happened. So, um, the Eureka Stockade incident wasn't just a spontaneous thing. It was inspired by the Red Ribbon Rebellion in Bendigo, and it was built on a lot of anger at the government itself.
Mhm.
The at the time the smaller colonial governments as well, and
Mhm.
the tyrannical nature to enforce this mining tax. And it was really, when we say the birth of the labor movement in Australia, it really was because it was. Eugene, are you alive? Are you still?
Yeah, I am. I am alive. Can you hear me?
You've gone all robotical again.
Oh, hello. 1 second.
Meanwhile, in this peaceful
Hello?
interlude where, yep, hold up.
Yeah. Does my thing work? Does it work?
No, he's still going all
Robotnik.
Robotnik. Yes. So yeah. So on the back of this
Right now?
month to like possibly like up to a year of frustration, the Eureka, the miners around, excuse me, the miners around Ballarat formed, gathered on a hill, and run up the Southern Cross flag, or the Eureka flag. No, I can hear an echo now.
Yeah, I think the internet connection with our comrade in Belarus is not exactly great at the
Can
moment.
you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
you're really
Yeah.
garbled, man.
Okay, let me just do this thing. I'm trying to fix the audio, so please keep on talking. My internet is okay. It's my audio that is terrible.
So,
Roger.
Spooks or Pac-Man, my knowledge escapes me. What happens after they form this little stockade, and then they swear allegiance to this flag, which was a crime at the time as well? What happens after that? Do you know?
Well, sorry to go into a bit of a personal backstory, but my ex-girlfriend and I went on our first big holiday to Sovereign Hill to go watch to go see it. And basically what sparked it off initially was an arson attack on the local pub, and eventually someone got killed by the police forces.
Oh,
The landlord, I believe, or the pub owner, and the locals rose up because of that. There was mass protests against the police, and then the barricade formed as a rebellion against the mining tax. Now, after the Eureka Stockade was formed, the local police attempted to break it up, only to be forced off by the locals, who were all armed, and forced them off the land. There was a massive skirmish that took place. And eventually, like, the miners had control over the stockade for a while, actually. They had their own autonomous system in place. But what happened eventually is that, as we all know, their demands were quite simple. That the mining licenses be dropped, that prospectors be allowed to reign freely and gain wealth and such on the basis of their own labor, and that they shouldn't be ripped off by the government, that they shouldn't have their stuff taxed or exploited, that they should have free will, basically, to mine the fields and to seek their fortune. The only problem was, of course, that this goes against the local colonial government's policy of they would tax anyone who actually made a find, and they also had taxes on the exchange, as in cash for gold policy. The one thing that really sort of sealed the deal, though, in terms of the revolution, was in fact that the local police were not formed from a group of volunteers who wanted to sustain order. In fact, the local colonial government had followed the logic that if you want to catch a criminal, send a criminal, and that the local police force was actually basically the equivalent of an armed gang of former bushrangers who were given basically privateer rights in terms of policing. As I'm sure you're aware, during that period, privateers were pirate ships operating under the guise of a crown lease, essentially. The same policy was followed with the Victorian police force at the time, and so most of them were either like convicted rapists, convicted murderers, convicted thieves, bushrangers, and these people naturally abused their power and extorted money from the locals. So it should be said, regardless of the working class nature of it, that the position wasn't particularly radical. It was simply there was no uprising against the filthy Anglos per se. It was more a rebellion against the government in general. I suppose you could say it was a sort of a quasi-anarchist rebellion rather than a movement as such. But essentially, after that was formed and the Eureka Stockade was formed to fight off the police forces, naturally the colonial group sent in the 14th Regiment of Foot, which put down the uprising. I mean, the casualties to the Eurekan rebellion were high, mainly because they were fighting against trained and disciplined troops who attacked in formation in force. And so the rebellion was broken up. Now, the big thing was, now, I know this is sort of going into the whole story, and I'm sorry if I'm preaching a history lesson here, but the entire Eurekan Council, the primary instigators of the rebellion, including the local mayor, the local mining chief who was elected to the position, plus the representative for the guy who was killed in the burning of the pub earlier on in the rebellion, were all put on trial for treason against the United Kingdom and sentenced. They were basically going to be sentenced to death for treason. And I'd like to point out that we do actually, as much as I hate to admit it, we do owe a debt of gratitude to the United States, in the sense that when it was announced that the 14 members of the Eurekan rebellion were put on trial for treason, pretty much every single Australian populace, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, all these major cities cried out in protest, stating that these people were fighting for their rights as workers and as free individuals, and not as that of treasonous rebels. They weren't fighting for a political cause. They were fighting for the right to be free and the right to be workers under their own labor. And so the British government, in charge of the colonial government at the time, remembering what happened in the United States in 1776, backed the fuck off. They knew that these Australian colonials and these bushrangers were armed and they were angry.
Mm.
And so the UK government backed off and acceded to their demands. All 14 Eurekan rebels put on trial were acquitted. All 14. And the mining licenses were revoked, the police was reformed, and basically the gold rush continued through what became Australia's colonial, if you could call it, a golden age in terms of economic and material growth. Australia entered its golden age, to excuse the pun, before its federation in 1901. Anyway, sorry to go on a really boring history lesson there, but yeah.
No, that was in your inebriated state. That was very concise. Thank you for that. And the way you describe how the stockade itself was being run sounds not exactly, but I've just got visions of like the Paris Commune coming through. Like
I would say that, but you've got to remember that in terms of the material conditions, I mean, as a historian, I kind of argue from the position of historical context. I think it would be dangerous for leftists in some sense to eject that, because I think that despite our fight for it as a working class symbol, and let's not mistake it, it is definitely a working class symbol.
Mm.
The right-wing ethno-nationalists do have some sort of claim to it, in the sense that there was a very large contingent of Chinese miners who rose up with us, and they never got any credit and were racially discriminated against by the rebels themselves, and of course, especially the government. The government took a quite harsh view on the Chinese migrants, as they did on indigenous people at the time.
Mm.
That being said, however, the Chinese, in terms of a union between the Eureka rebels and the Chinese, they did make common cause, and it was very ground shattering, considering that Australia's racial politics is probably second only to South Africa as the most, like, between the United States, South Africa, and Australia. I think between us three, there is no doubt that our racial policies are perhaps the worst in the developed world as such, and that despite that, the Chinese and Eurekan rebels collaborated together to break the power of the colonial state and the local police, who are corrupt shit. So I will say, however, that they were still discriminated against despite that. So honestly, though, I would say that the Eurekan stockade is, I think, quite rightly so, whether it's been deified and enshrined in mythos or not, it is an important symbol of the Australian Republican movement. Not only that, the Australian workers' movement. And I think that this effort undertaken by the unions of Victoria to seize, to use the word, the Eurekan flag and return it to its rightful owners, that being the workers of Australia, is a noble cause, and I think everybody should get behind it as hard as they can.
Well, just before we move on to a more modern history of the flag with the Labour movement in general, I just want to say hello to as many names as I can see in the chat. So Only Bro 555, Socialism or Barbarism, Paul Leonachnovic, I am so sorry for that pronunciation. Socialism or Barbarism, thanks for coming. Salesman 19. And
by the way, Salesman 19, thanks for donating. He donated to the thing.
Yes. So on the Eureka
like to...
flag Raisley, it was sitting at about $15,300. It has now suddenly jumped to $18,114. And there's a couple of donations here with some. I'll try not to dox anyone if it says anything. In the comment it says. I can hear myself in the audio. I think it's sorry. Someone.
Sorry, Eugene. Mute your mic, man. Yep.
There we go. So one of the comments here is EML fan here. We got to get rid of those Cali fags and get them back to their own land. Only then can we have a Soviet Cascadia. There's another anonymous one here. Save that flag. #EML. And then I wonder who this one's from. Workers of the World Unite.
Hello.
This is brilliant. Thank you all for donating. This is going towards a good cause, and I will state that if Eugene's audio comes back, Eugene can tell us about.
Can you hear me?
Good. So the money that's being raised to buy the piece of the Eureka flag, it's the Eureka Foundation, I believe, that's selling the piece, I think. But they're doing it for charity, are they not? Could you fill us in with that, Eugene?
Oh, so basically, if I recall correctly, I'm Googling it right now because basically the story is the following. There was, in India, there was, how do you call it? Wait a second, I forgot the word. So, how do you call this place for the orphanage? Yes, orphanage. There was this orphanage in India that was run by a literal fucking pedophile, and he abused the kids. It was extremely crazy, right? And the point is that he wasn't convicted for his crimes for some reason. He died, and his crimes appeared, after that. And the owner of this piece of flag, if I recall correctly, it's not. It was a piece of flag that belonged to. It belongs to this guy who is familiar with the story, and he wanted to help out the kids, and he had no money per se to do this, and he wanted to sell this piece of flag that he got from his grandfather, I guess, who was connected with the leadership, with one of the leaders of the stockade. And basically, the flag is being sold this Monday to help raise money for those kids in India. And I'm not really sure what will happen to those donations if the raise they won't get enough money to do that. Like, they never mentioned that the labor hall, the trade hall never mentioned what will they do with the money if they won't be able to purchase it, because it will be.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure the Victorian Trades Hall will. My guess is that they're gonna give the money to the charity itself, even if they don't get the piece of flag.
It is possible. It is possible. I haven't seen them stating anything about that. This is the problem. So, but the story is that there's been a news article on the topic. I'm trying to find it at the moment to link it in the chat. Yeah, the flag goes to auction in Melbourne for good cause on the courier.com.
Oh god, your audio is degrading by the second again.
Oh, 1 second then.
So while he fixes that, I just want to say to the live chat that we will be taking questions and requests in exchange for small donations. So if you want Positive Pac-Man and I to, I don't know, sing a song, you can donate, say, like $1 or $5, and we'll sing a song for you. If you've got like that one question you don't think we would ever answer, you could donate $1 or $5, and then we'll answer it. Make sure that you put into your comment on the donation EML fan, so that we know, that the donation's gone through, and then we'll have to fulfill the request. I will state some requests and questions we will still not do, just in case, certain questions like pertaining to if something is or is not. Wink, wink. I'll let you figure that one out for yourself. So,
can you hear me? Is my audio better?
Yeah, we go.
Yeah, okay. Now you sound 100 times better. That's great.
Silky smooth Belarusian.
Silky smooth. So,
yeah. So I can read this news article for the people, some parts of it, so that the people will know what's going on.
Yeah, give us a run through on the where the money's gonna go.
So it's owner of this piece of flag, which is really small. It's 40mm by 85mm fragment. Is a man by the name of Adrian Millane. He says his great-grandfather, the wonderfully named Francis William Joseph Breen Hanlon, was a bosom friend of the Stockade's leader, Peter Lalor, who later presented Harlan with a piece of the flag. Quote, my grandfather referred to himself as Lalor's cousin, and there have been references to him as a cousin in other places, but I have no hard evidence of the truth of that, says Mr. Millane. The fragment came to Mr. Millane's via Francis Harlan's sister, Dorothy, down through his own grandmother, Gertrude Hanlon. So we see the giant family relations that go back to the stockade itself. Here is the information about the orphanage, so that people get more information on the charity. Mr. Mullane says he's selling the piece to fund his efforts helping an orphanage in Bengal, India. The Mole Boys Town Orphanage in Molzaba, West Bengal, was run until 2015 by a renegade and ultimately defrocked priest named John Robert Thwaites. Thwaites was a self-proclaimed mystic, seer, and author of dubious spiritual texts proclaiming his knowledge of vast universe. He was also, says Mr. Mullane, a serial sex abuser and pedophile. Thwaites died in 2015, having run the orphanage and the school for 40 years. Both the school and the orphanage are now facing destruction as supporters abandon them in the face of the revelations. Mr. Mullane says he discovered the Boys Town Orphanage during his travels 10 years ago and has spent the last 2 years investigating Thwaites' unpunished crimes. He's now dedicated the rest of his life to making restitution to the children, and the proceeds from the sale of the Eureka fragment will enable that outcome. So basically, this is where the money goes. Hopefully, the situation with the orphanage will be solved. Hopefully, they will find new sponsorships and they will become financially stable again.
Does the article state where the fragment of the Eureka flag is going to go?
Does it state one?
I was just thinking, like, after the flag is hopefully purchased, does the article state? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm mixing up this article with a different article. The other article was stating was by the Victorian Trades Hall in that they were going to pledge to put it on display in the Trades Hall itself.
Yeah. If we buy it, we have to raise money. It will be on display in Trades Hall. Yeah, Victorian Trades Hall.
Brilliant. So, I apologize. I have been stuttering for some reason for this past week. I don't know why. I'm trying to work through it. The history of the flag doesn't actually end with the stockade itself, in that the labor movement itself, which was born in the stockade, continued on afterwards, especially during the sheep shearers' strike in the 1890s. I'm going to self-promote here and quote from my own article. Later, as the workers of Australia formed themselves into unions, the Eureka flag began to be associated with the Australian labour movement as a whole. The 1891 Australian shearers' strike featured the Eureka flag prominently. Many unions and labour movements used the Eureka flag or the Southern Cross constellation as part of their logo, both representing the Australian workers' way of life and the heart and spirit of Eureka itself. And it's many unions are older than Australia itself, because they started before Australian Federation, before 1901, because of the shearers' strike and because of the good work done by the Eureka Stockade Rebellion. I was just wondering if Spoogs or Pac-Man, if you could give our overseas comrades a quick rundown of the labour movement in general in Australia, how successful it's been and whatnot.
I'm not too familiar with it, unfortunately. I forgot a lot.
I mean, I suppose I can give a brief synopsis. My knowledge is not that exemplary either. Basically, post Eureka, as you said, the shearer strike, there was that. But the Eureka flag, after both the rebellion and the and the following shearer strike, the Eureka flag basically did become sort of, I mean, I hate to use a modern analogy, especially with our mortal enemies, or if you call them that as such, but it basically became the Union's equivalent of the Kekistani flag that you see flying around all over the place. It was the go-to banner, like it would be everywhere. The Australian Republican movement especially has had strong ties to using that flag. I mean, I personally think, despite many people saying, "Oh, it's a flag of open rebellion, it would, cause friction with the Commonwealth, etc., etc." I personally think that if Australia does vote to be a republic, which after Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II dies, I do believe will happen, I want the Eureka flag to be adopted as the Australian national flag.
It has to happen.
Not
Yeah.
so much as a sign of defiance against, the crown as such, but more as it's
A symbol of independence.
Spooks is right. It's a symbol of it's the only thing that Australia has close in terms of the Americans, in terms of overthrowing colonial rule. We acknowledged the help that Britain, despite all its excesses, has given us, but at the end of the day, we are our own independent culture with our own independent ideals. Australian ideals and Australian culture are vastly different from that of the UK. Vastly different. With personal liberty being one of the chief tenets of it. And I think that the Eureka flag in general is something that we need to seriously consider as to be our national banner. I think it should be our national banner, if not in its original form, perhaps in a green and gold variant. I don't know, whatever.
No, green and gold variants look like crap.
I
Red and
know,
Yeah,
yellow.
they
but
do. What's
Red
up?
and yellow.
I know what you mean. I know,
Red
yeah,
and
red
yellow.
and yellow would be good.
I think the Eureka flag as being a symbol of resistance against the Queen and against English, rule and having the Queen as a head of state and whatnot was really cemented in the mid 70s, with the dismissal of the Gough Whitlam Labour government. Because because as he said those words, well, we may say God save the Queen because nothing will save the Governor General. All the people in the crowd were waving Eureka flags in support of Gough Whitlam.
And not only that, there was the Wharfie strike of the late 80s that we also have to consider. Again, the Eureka flag made an appearance amongst union movements for that as well. I mean, just at the history of it, I mean, here we see Eureka flags are seen in the crowd of the ALP Congress in November 1975. It's been flown up flagpoles everywhere in Australia for the longest time as a symbol of the Australian worker and their right to be independent and free from state control, especially foreign state control. Now, I'm not sure whether I can honestly claim to be the most rabid of Republicans, being the filthy Anglo that I am. I can at least say that Australia as a country really needs to adopt the flag as a symbol, more as a symbol of our right to govern ourselves. And I mean I mean that in the most sincere way, that I think that, let's face it, all of our money is currently got the effigy of Queen Elizabeth on there. I think that
so Goulash Guy, I just want to say that Goulash Guy sends his apologies that he couldn't make it in, and I specifically want to mention it right now with what you're saying, Pac-Man. It's because apparently republicanism is a big thing for Goulash Guy, and he he said this is something that means a lot. big boy republicanism and unions. They're also good.
Well,
Yeah, but knowing Goulash, you would prefer that we rename the unions to councils.
yeah. If you could send a reply to Goulash for me and say that I agree with his Republican sentiment, but I still think that Cornman did nothing wrong, and that I extend my apologies that our alliance is one of convenience, not of one of true belief. Yeah, Khrushchev did nothing wrong. Anyway, moving on from Goulash's Hungarian tendencies, more to the point, I think that I do extend a level of respect to not maybe exceedance in terms of authority, but rather respect to the current Queen of Great Britain, as she did wear a uniform against the Nazis during the Second World War. So you got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, how about I don't though?
Privilege notwithstanding.
How about I don't?
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
fair enough. That's fair enough. But she could have run off to Canada, but she stayed. So I gotta give her respect for that. But beyond that, after she dies, I think that you won't find a more ardent Republican than myself, because let's face it, despite the obvious intent that we need to have a republic in this country, more to the point, the trouble of changing those fucking coins to that ugly piece of shit Charles. I mean, I don't think I could honestly bring myself to do that. Could you imagine those ears and that nose on all of our money? Like, are you fucking kidding?
They're gonna have to make all the coins like 10% bigger.
I know, just to fit in the ears.
Isn't he
We're gonna
going
have
to
to widen
abdicate?
the 50-cent piece.
Was it the thing? Wasn't it the thing that it was planned that he would like inherit, but he would abdicate instantly, and there was another person
Yeah,
who would take
Prince
charge?
William, because he's
Yeah, Prince
married.
William, King William.
He's married to what's her name?
That woman.
Duchess of Cambridge. Can't remember.
Yeah.
You see, like, the funny thing is, as radical as I am, I don't think I'd give them the guillotine. I just think I'd just seize their lands and their titles and just turn them into working class people. Because I think that would be a bigger punishment than guillotining them. Because if you guillotine them, then you just justify them. No. We're not gonna guillotine you as a filthy Borgies. No. We're gonna reduce you to the working class and then make you understand just exactly what it means to be one of us. Turn them into a peasant. Just make them, like, remove all the threshing machines from the farms in northern Yorkshire and just make the Duchess of Cambridge pull the plough for once. See how she goes.
I'm down to do that for a day.
Just as a question to all three of you, do you think, like, in a broader sense, do you think it's necessary to protect certain symbols, like the Eureka flag itself, the hammer and sickle and whatnot? And if so, how do we protect it?
For one thing, we can right the fuck now. The Australian unions can make a damn concerted effort to take back the Eureka flag from these xenophobic, racist, homophobic pieces of shit.
Looking at you, Australia first.
Yeah.
That infest the symbol of Australian independence and workers' liberation. We need to take it back from them. Look, you can talk about immigration in Australia as a logistical issue, but as an ethical and moral issue, there is no question, and those cunts need to be ashamed of themselves for the position they push.
Mm.
We need I think we also need to get more, just left-wingers in general to be willing to use it and educate them on the history. Because one of the reasons, I'll give you an actual real-life example, right? Because I have one hanging up in my room, and a friend comes over, right? Oh, fuck. Have I really gone robotic? I shall fix this.
You're making such a good point, though. Like, you were just...
there we go.
Okay.
Wait, this better be better.
Yes.
Go ahead, Spooks.
Nice. All right, so I hang one up in my room, right? Because I am Eureka Socialist Gang. But I have a friend who comes over and he didn't know about the history of the flag that much. And he instantly comes into my room and he fucking sees it because it's big. It's like 190 by 60 centimeters or whatever. It's a big flag. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake. For fuck's sake, Spooks. Why do you have a Eureka flag here? And I had to spend like 5 minutes fucking explaining it to him. I would rather not have to do that every time someone walks into my room, thanks. Can we just please put it back to fucking left-wing use? We need to, like, the next time you're doing shit, bring a Eureka flag. Because it's associated as this fucking right-wing nationalist symbols because the right-wingers aren't afraid to use it. I mean, fucking Australia First tried to put it on, like, their, I don't know, voting things or whatever.
How to vote cards?
Yeah, I think vote cards and a few other minor things, but it was big enough to get a reaction. But it's like
reactionary.
Yeah. Ooh. I bizzle again. No, but if they're not afraid to use it, right, and they've tarnished the symbolism of the flag, then why can't we do it? If we use the flag more often, then we can, we can bring it back to more of its Union sort of rebellious roots instead of, oh, fuck off, Muslims.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't represent that at all. It just needs to go back, please. Please.
Okay.
And next time a right-wing party like uses it on like a piece of their fucking voting cards, posters, whatever. How about you do some good illegalist shit, some vandalism, and fucking blur it out. They don't get to use it. Fuck them.
I agree with your sentiment, Spooks, but I don't think I'm going to ever be able to explain away the giant Soviet flag hanging in my room.
Yeah, I think that's a bit too far gone. Sorry, Pac-Man.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to explain that one away.
It could have been worse. It could have been that variant where it's like the Soviet Union flag, but it's a giant picture of Stalin on it. You could have had that. Imagine explaining that to your parents.
Actually, you know what I want? I really want to get this flag in person. I want you guys remember the glorious defense of Pixelgrad, of course. I'm sure you would all be aware.
Yes. I spent some time in the
I
trenches.
want someone to actually make a variant of that flag where it has the anarchy symbol in the bottom right corner and the hammer and sickle in the top right corner, overlaid over an ANCOM flag, like red and black, with the anarchists in the bottom right and the.
I'm doing that with a friend of mine. We're looking for a printing place to print off custom flags.
Well, once you get
I know a place.
By 10.
Sign me the fuck up.
Because I'm going to go around Adelaide and just start raising them up every fucking flagpole I can find.
Eugene, I guess I'll pose the question to you in a slightly different way. Are there symbols in Belarus or Europe or whatnot or abroad that need to be reclaimed and protected? And if so, how would people achieve that?
Oh, bring them down.
I mean, personally, I'd like to see the hammer and sickle taken back.
Yeah, that would be great. Like, because due to the fact that most of the left wing in here, Hungary 56. I think Hungary 56, Social Barbarism mentions it. I think Hungary 56 is a great flag, and we could really use it to mean something rather than meh, fuck the fucking foreigners, meh, fuck the Russians, fuck the Germans. We'll do our own fascism and nationalism. Meh. You know what Hungary 56 is?
No, not too familiar.
During the 56 rebellion, when they were making like the revolution there, they got themselves the flags, which were Hungarian government flags, and they cut out the middle part, the Hungary flag, the Hungarian People's Republic, which had like a Soviet symbol on it. And they used the Hungarian flags with a hole in it as their symbol. And basically, the fascists used it as like an anti-communist thing, right? despite the fact that it wasn't. It was more of anti-imperialist flag than anything else, because it was more about Russians getting out of Hungary than Soviets and socialism going away. You know. Therefore, I think this is one of those flags that has been used by fascists for such a long time, and it should be stopped, and we should reclaim it as a Hungarian workers' flag again, which could represent Hungary standing on its own without like any oppression by other countries or by the working class. And I think it would be really beautiful and cool. Also, hammer and sickles, yeah, like we don't have unions per se, you know, we don't have any political parties other than, like, in Russia, some obscure fucking, you know, political parties which could be big, but again, I don't think they are not actually like popular movements that could spur, you know, out of oppression and whatnot. I believe all of the symbols of the Soviet era must be reclaimed. They must be given a new meaning. They must be reconsidered, and the socialism itself should be reconsidered. And because, like, it's really a lost cause, to be honest, you know. But still, I believe that ideas are not a lost cause because they are eternal, because they are as they exist as long as capitalism exists. This is my short, you know, analysis of all of that stuff in Eastern Europe.
Nice.
I just like to point out every time.
I'm sorry. Before you say somebody said Belarusia in chat. Russia.
Belarusia.
and Russian. Nice. Oh my god.
Yeah. So
1 second.
I just want to.
It doesn't work. Fuck! It didn't work. 1 second.
What?
It didn't work. Oh fuck!
Huh?
What's not working? What?
Yes.
Oh my god! Huh?
No.
Nothing.
No.
Wait, what do
You
you
want to
trying
sit here and say that I'm a goddamn fucking Russian? You get in my face with that, I'll beat your goddamn ass, you son of a bitch.
Yes. Thank you. Now we can move on.
Well
I
done.
apologize.
Well done.
Amazing.
For sound this back when he was saying something.
Well, no, look, I hate to agree with Comrade Goulash on this point, but like, when you read about the Hungarian Revolution and like you hear ultra tankies come on and say, "Oh, they deserved it," and I know I say it all the time, but it's honestly just to piss off Goulash. Let's be honest. Hashtag anti-tank gang. It's just that you see the main parties of this revolution, or at least the groups that rose up against the Soviets in Hungary. You see the main groups, and they're like, there are fascist conspirators. And then you search up the main people who are involved in the conspiracy. Political party, the Hungarian Peasants Party, the Hungarian Workers' Council Party, like the Hungarian Trade Union. And you're sort of thinking, wait, are you telling me that the Hungarian unions rose up against the Soviets? But they're fascists, aren't they? But
everyone who disagrees with Moscow is a fascist. Don't you know? This is the 101 of Marxism. What the fuck? We talked about this.
Yeah, no, you're right. When people wonder why I'm a positivist, it's like Comrade Trotsky was right. The revolution needs to be international and permanent. And if all else fails, we wipe the planet clean of human scum, and the dolphins will inherit the earth and establish full communism.
Well, hey,
I mean,
I was wondering how long we'd get. How long it'd be until that positive posting comes up?
Well, no, in all seriousness, I am a filthy ice pick dodger, as you know. But even I look at this sort of situation regarding the Eureka flag and all other Soviet symbols, and like, I think what's important is, to quote a very great episode of Star Trek The Next Generation regarding the God Emperor Kahless, perhaps the words are more important than the man. And I think that's what we need to sort of take into account as Marxists and leftists in general. is that we look at the Eureka Rebellion, we look at the Soviet Union, and we look at the workers' councils of Hungary and, you know, the people of the Paris Commune. Yes, all the people who ran these organizations were human beings with faults and cognitive dissonance, and obviously in many cases they strayed from the party line for what we would consider acceptable. But at the end of the day, it's the ideals of the Soviet Union, the ideals of Marxism, the ideals of the commune that we strive for. And I think that the Eureka Rebellion is the Australian equivalent of that. It's this rebellion against the state, the idea that some government several thousand miles away can tell the average Australian that their, you know, opinion, that their work, that their life doesn't matter. It's not acceptable. The like you see it with the gay marriage vote that we've recently had. You see it with the NBN rollout and how various groups of the Australian public have rallied against it to being installed in their area. I mean, I know that's not the equivalent of exploitation and, you know, troops being sent against the workers, but it all boils down to this. How much do the Australian people have to take before we realize that core ideal of sticking it to the guys in Canberra and to, by extension, the guys in London and the guys in DC, how long before the Australian people realize that we need to do something about it? I mean, every Australian I've spoken to, and trust me, I work for a telecom company, I speak to a lot of people every day over the phone from every branch of life, from every demographic, from every fucking part of the country. All of them, from the right wing to the left wing to the centrist to the liberal to the God knows fucking what, all of them express dissatisfaction with the government. And all of them have a desire for the Australian working class, regardless of their position, to take its preeminence in the governing of the country. When I mention NBN to people, all they say is that engineers should make engineering policy and teachers should make education policy, almost as though that the workers in those industries should seize the means of those productions in order to establish an efficient and coherent society that actually fucking works. Class consciousness is on the rise. We just have to spread it and we just have to make it happen.
We just have to be really closely connected to all of that. Like, really, in my opinion, if we... I have been talking about this for quite some time already. I believe that I agree with Cockshaw that radical democracy is the only way to push forward with the socialist revolution today. And, like, in my opinion, like, Australia is one of those cases where I can easily point to Australia and say, yo, and to Belarus, actually, the same. Like, why the fuck does the government have so much say over what is being done in a particular region of the country? Why don't we push for more radical democracy in the cities? Like town halls being ruling bodies and this basically with the very direct participation of the population of this town, make them rule over themselves. This not only will engage people in politics because they could now do some changes, you know, in the world, but also will spread the class consciousness and the understanding of the world around them. They'll be like, oh fuck, I'm not merely a plumber or a manager of this company, or I'm not merely a student, but I am a citizen and I am directly involved with what is happening in my country. I have the power to change stuff. And I believe this is a way to affect politics, to push for more decentralized democracy and the more direct involvement of the people. Like, those are the things that we should really, like, stand on, because this is what people can... get behind, in my opinion, easily, because they will be like, hell yeah, like I live in, you know, for example, Northern Territories, and if I believe that people from Northern Territories are the best to decide what is better for Northern Territories. Like, why don't we give more power to those states? Why don't we give more power to the people in the particular cities?
Power to the people.
power to the people, directly to the people. Like, you live in a particular area, you work in a particular area, you must be able to decide what is happening, to this area. It's like more town halls, more of that. I have a hard on fucking decentralized self-management, like, and how you call this? Yeah, it's like decentralized federal democracy. I really like it. Therefore, if we push for those reforms and give more and more power to the people in political sense of the word, this will push left-wing politics even further, in my opinion. This will be not only to the benefit of the people, but to the benefit of the left-wing politics in general.
Mm.
Well, I know
that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Well, no, I agree with Eugene in this, that motherfucking platformism, Dabberini.
Hell yeah.
But like, what I really fucking hate. Sorry to rail on tankies again. I know I do it too much, but
it's okay. We all hate tankies here.
Yeah, but the thing is,
I'm sorry. Yeah, please.
The thing is, on certain days, especially seeing as I'm consuming alcohol at the moment, on certain days I am a tanky myself, being from the Marxist, Leninist, Trotskyist camp.
When there's too many reactionaries, everyone just goes up the political compass.
Yeah, but even though I'm a filthy trot, trots are still authoritarian, myself included. But I'd like to think I'm more liberal than Stalinist Maoists, but that's off topic.
Don't say liberal. Don't say liberal. Liberal is not a good thing to be.
You mean libertarian?
I'm drunk. Shut the fuck up, all of you. Just so you guys know, not only am I drinking vodka, it's motherfucking potato vodka. I am going full gopnik right now.
Oh, bled.
Yes, potato supremacy.
Suka bled. Gopnik. I am squatting and eating the shimshkis.
Shimshkis.
All rise for hard best.
Cheeky breaky!
Donkey!
By the way, did you know that Cheeky breaky of Damke is literally has the same meaning in Russia as in West? It's a satire of fucking like nobody says that unironically. It's a phrase that cannot be said unironically.
Oh,
it literally means either stalker, video game, or this whole Slavic memes.
Just before we get off topic, Spooks, did you have anything to add to sort of cap off the Eureka flag thing?
Democracy is a spook.
The hell with democracy, DDD. No. I think I can only go out with a statement. So, fuck right wingers who use it. Give it back to the unions, thanks, mate.
All right, very concise. Well done. Well done.
The dictatorship of the Eureka Congress.
I guess to self-promote once again, I'll just read out the last little paragraph to my article. The history of the Eureka flag has always been and always will be associated with workers, unions, and the labour movement in Australia. From its origins as a symbol of resistance, it has become a symbol of unity between all hard-working Australians. It is up to us who stand on the forefront of action in this modern age to take action and to prevent the diluting of an important symbol of our struggle.
Beautiful.
Do you hear the people
sing?
Singing the songs of angry men? It is the music of the people who shall not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a light about to shine when tomorrow comes. Sorry.
All good.
That was great. That was beautiful.
If anybody listening also wants to help Victoria Trades Hall to buy a piece of the Eureka flag and to keep a piece of working class history and working class hands, then you can go to eurekaflag.raisley.com link in the description of this video. If you can,
And audio. Don't forget.
Yeah,
On
yes.
SoundCloud, iTunes, and with a lot of other
SoundCloud,
places.
iTunes, and so on and so forth. Yes. Only give what you can. Don't put yourself out on the street. Every little bit helps, especially because yesterday it was at $15,000 raised. Now it's up to $18,000 raised. So
Getting there.
Exactly. We're on our way, comrades. And I guess we're just over an hour now. So
Very nice.
I think that's probably a good time to wrap up. What do you guys think?
Yeah, we have to wrap up now, and we have to record a podcast now. Oh.
Oh my god.
Yeah, cut! Yeah, cut! Yeah, cut!
What a good way to
That's
end.
amazing.
Oh,
Dude,
end on a high note.
that should be used. That should be used as an intro to an evening with comrades.
Actually, yes. Let's
It
do
actually
it.
should though.
Let's do
Alright.
it. That's the official
I'll-
intro to an evening with comrades.
Spooks, link me to it, and I'll make it happen.
Happening.
This is amazing.
All right. On that note,
Oh, great.
I think it's a good time to end. Thank you all for joining us for this surprise.
Thank you for sending money to
Yes.
the thing.
Hoorah!
Thank you
It's
for joining
great.
us on the Save the Eureka Flag live stream with Eastern Marshlands. Thank you to all those who donated. Workers of the world, unite to save this small piece of working class history. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep updated on everything Eastern Marshlands, and so we can keep you updated on the state of the piece of the flag. And we hope to see you for our regular broadcasting with an evening with comrades, hopefully with a new intro Tuesday night and a Radio Silence podcast at some point at this point. And I want to give a special thanks to the people joining us on the live stream, Positus Pac-Man, Spoogs and Shit, and Eugene.
Hey, thank you very much.
Hey.
All right.
And everybody who's in the chat right now, give us a short break and go on Discord to our Discord server. We'll be recording the newest episodes of Radio Silence Podcast. And yeah, that's it. That's all I want to say.
All right. Catch you all later.
Later.
Later.